Hey guys, welcome to welcome to the workshop today. It's nice to see you all again. So today we're gonna talk about migrating from Redis cluster to single instance Dragonfly. So yeah, it's a workshop in the migration series, which is a very important topic, obviously, because no matter if you're trying Dragonfly locally or if you ever decide to hit the button to switch in production, it's a crucial step. That's why we spend a lot of time and we do this a couple of times to make sure that the migration experience is seamless for all of you. Cool, let's dive in. So as for today, we're going to talk about a few things again. And the first would be a brief introduction to Dragonfly, just in case some of the folks are new to the community and doesn't know what the Dragonfly project is. And then we're going to do a recap of the migration techniques. We have covered some of them in the past. But this time we will go through them again. And thirdly, as for today, we're going to emphasize on the migration from Redis cluster to a single instance Dragonfly. We're going to see how it works. And finally, well, we will be looking into the future and we're going to see new things and features about the Dragonfly cluster, where we're at, and what you can expect. So yeah, and as I mentioned, we have covered migration techniques a couple of times. And by the way, we have a new dedicated page for events. So if you go to the Dragonfly homepage, under community and events, you can see, we have upcoming events. This is the one for today. We're going to be in Paris as well in March. So yeah, if you happen to be there, please come join us at our booth as well. And for past events, we also have all the recordings listed over here. So yeah, if you want to rewatch some of the sessions, the workshop sessions or the community office hour sessions in the past, they're listed here as well. Cool, that's nice. So yeah, as usual, I'm going to do a very brief introduction to Dragonfly. So Dragonfly is a open source community-driven project. And as of today, we have 22.3K stars on GitHub. Okay? So it is Redis and Memcached compatible in-memory data store. Right? So the differences, right, of Dragonfly is that it's totally built from the ground up, right? So it's something new. It's not a fork of Redis. So the team and the community built Dragonfly.
Joe, can you just double check you're sharing your screen, please?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I've been talking. Can you guys see my screen now? Cool. All right. So
yes, thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, basically, really sorry. I was going through slides and didn't realize. So this was the agenda, and this was the events page that I mentioned under community events. Right. So we have like a KubeCon coming, and we have past recordings over here. Thank you, Laura. Let's continue. And yeah, so Dragonfly, we built it from ground up. We use the modern multi-threaded share nothing architecture, right? So in our recent benchmarks, we were able to achieve 6.43 million operations per second on an AWS C7G and 16x large instance, right? So in comparison with our previous benchmarks, which was 4 million on C6GN, right? So that's like a 60% increase. Right. So yeah, it's this shows that how Dragonfly can advance with the hardware together. So we didn't do too much of tuning. Obviously, like we keep performance and optimization in mind. But yeah, for this particular new set of benchmark, we didn't do like too much tuning. It's just like the existing architecture. It just advances with the hardware. Right? Dragonfly is also able to handle up to 1 TB in memory data as well. So yeah, so on the single instance, we can get up to 1 TB. Right? Compatibility-wise, Dragonfly is 100% compatible with Redis and Memcached in terms of the wire protocol. Right? Currently, we have all the Memcached commands implemented, and we have 240 plus Redis commands implemented as well. So yeah, and we're adding like more commands every day. As I mentioned, Dragonfly is very hardware efficient. So based on our measurements, we are able to give up to 50 or even more cost savings in terms of hardware. We have primary replica model for high availability, and yeah, that's quite standard. And it's also very important in terms of migration as well. And we have a very active community on GitHub and Discord. Cool. So yeah, that's the Dragonfly project. Feel free to check our GitHub site, GitHub page over here, dragonflydb/dragonfly. And now we're gonna go through some of the migration techniques that we've covered before, and the one that we'll be covering today. So yeah, as we have covered a couple of times before, we can migrate a Redis single instance to a Dragonfly single instance. Right? So the available techniques are snapshot and restore, replication, and sentinel promotion. So the list here is like kind of from the easiest to the hardest, right? So, but frankly speaking, even the hardest, which is the sentinel promotion, over here, it's not that hard, and yeah, it is very seamless, and it helps with the downtime. And as for today, we're going to specifically looking into how to migrate a Redis cluster to a Dragonfly single instance using an awesome tool called Riot, which is also part of the Redis community. All these techniques are documented on our documentation page under Dragonfly db.io/docs/migrating to Dragonfly. So yeah, you can follow along if you're interested, and if you want to try Dragonfly locally, or do the production switch as well. Cool. So yeah, we're gonna do a recap of the first 3 techniques from Redis single to Dragonfly single instance. So the first is snapshot and restore. It's quite straightforward. So if you take a snapshot on the Redis instance, so snapshot is a way to that Redis uses to persist data, right? So as the name suggests, it's taking a dump, it's taking a snapshot of what you currently have in the memory, right? All the key set, all the keys and data set, they will be captured and snapshotted as a RDB file. So if you issue the save or bgsave command on your Redis instance, then it will create a file called dump.rdb by default, right? So upon initialization of your Dragonfly instance, if you specify the file path to this RDB file, Dragonfly would be able to load the dump.rdb file, right? So that you have all the keys and data set in Dragonfly upon initialization. Right? So that's quite straightforward. Next up, we have a technique called replication, right? So Dragonfly can, we support like a primary replica for high availability, right? But because of the compatibility, Dragonfly can also be a replica of a Redis instance, right? So imagine that you have a Redis instance running, containing like a bunch of keys, and you have an empty Dragonfly instance over here. If you issue the replica of command, and specify the host to the original Redis instance, then Dragonfly is able to do the replication, right? So all the keys and data set, they're going to be replicated, and additional write or updates of your keys will be also streamed over to the Dragonfly instance. Right? So after that, when you feel that it's ready, then issue the replica of no one command that will break the link of this replication, but your Dragonfly instance would have all the keys in there as well. So this is easy and quite straightforward as well, and it's covered in one of our previous office hour sessions, right? So as you can tell, Dragonfly is able to load a dump RDB file from Redis. That shows like just how compatible Dragonfly is, right? In terms of compatibility. In fact, the replica of command also utilizes the dump file. So when you issue the command, it will first ask the Redis instance to create an RDB file, and it will load it. And in the meantime, all the continuous writes and updates commands, they will be streamed over. Right? So that just shows again how compatible it is. Dragonfly is in terms of like loading the RDB file, as well as in terms of commands, right? But as you can tell, probably from these two techniques, they kind of imply some sort of downtime, right? Because on the application side, you need to make a switch from the Redis host or URL to the Dragonfly one after you're done with either the restoring or the replication. So both of them, they implies certain amount of downtime, but it shows like the compatibility of Dragonfly. The third technique of migrating a single instance is to use software or a tool called Sentinel, right? So yeah, let's give a brief explanation of what Sentinel is. So Sentinel basically it is a Redis instance running in special mode, right? So it doesn't provide any data manipulation functionalities. So it doesn't actually hold your keys or your data set. It doesn't provide any of the services like that, right? But as the name suggests, it's a guard, right? So it provides a few things. It's a monitoring, tool. It provides like configuration, and most importantly, it can perform automatic failover, right? So again, Sentinel is a Redis instance running special mode, and it does, it does the monitoring and automatic failover things, but it doesn't do the, the actual data manipulation or get set data serving, right? So yeah, that's basically what Sentinel is. It's because Sentinel is used for high availability, right? Because it performs failover automatically for your Redis instance, right? So we can make Sentinel itself highly available as well by employing a Sentinel cluster, right? So in this case, we have a Sentinel cluster which contains 3 Sentinel instances, right? And like they're monitoring the actual Redis services like like downstream. So yeah, in this case, what we can do is that we have a Sentinel cluster, right? And then we have a Redis instance, and it is the primary. It's the actual data store that you use. So it is the primary, right? And similar to this one, right? Because of compatibility, right? Dragonfly can join this whole setup as a replica. So if we initialize a Dragonfly instance and we run the replica of command specifying the original Redis data store host, right? Then this Dragonfly instance joins this host setup as a replica. Right? And once we do that, the Sentinel cluster is going to be aware of this topology as well, right? So it will be able to monitor both the original Redis primary and the Dragonfly replica that's joined, right? The Sentinel cluster will also offload some of the read commands to the Dragonfly instance, right? Because it's the replica. It doesn't handle writes, but it does handle reads. So yeah, so by doing that, we have like a Sentinel cluster, we have a Redis primary, we have a Dragonfly replica, and they all work together as a high availability topology, right? So once we have that, if we shut down the original Redis primary instance by either kill the process or issue the shutdown commands directly to the instance, right? So then this Redis instance, it will go offline. So when that happens, the Sentinel cluster, they need to have a meeting to discuss who to promote as the primary, because now we don't have a primary anymore. We need to promote another instance as the primary so it can continue to handle reads and writes, right? But in this case, because we have only one replica, we have one replica, the Dragonfly instance, right? And it's the only candidate to be promoted. So the Sentinel cluster will automatically fail over from this Redis primary to the Dragonfly replica and promote the Dragonfly instance as the primary, and then it continues to serve reads and writes command, right? And because this Dragonfly instance, it was a replica of the original, so it has like almost all the data set in there already, right? And the switch is seamless. Like you don't have to shut down your application in order to make the switch, just to make sure that your application was originally talking to the Sentinel guarded topology, and that's it. So nothing changes in your application. There's no downtime, right? So yeah, this is so this cake is a little bit harder than the previous two, but check out our previous sessions. It's all not that hard as well, and the switch was really seamless. Cool. So yeah, that's the recap we have for the single Redis instance to single Dragonfly instance migration. Let me check if we have questions now. If not, I'm going to continue with the cluster migration and probably take questions in the end. Cool. I don't I don't see any at the moment. So let's continue. Cool. So as for today, we're going to be focusing on how to migrate a Redis cluster, right? So first off, what is Redis cluster? Right? So Redis cluster is a specification that the community, that the Redis community has to provide a way to run Redis instances, uh, so that the data is sharded across these Redis instances automatically, right? So basically, it's a way for horizontal scaling, right? So it scales um, your data across these Redis instances horizontally. So if you have like very high amount of in-memory data, that's probably the way to go. It also supports high availability. For simplicity, I didn't show it in this diagram over here, but all these Redis instances, they are actually primary instances, right? Because they all need to handle both reads and writes, right? But for each of the primary instances, you can have like one or more replicas, right? Imagine like you have like more instances here that is just a replica of this Redis 0, Redis 1, Redis 2. Like each of them, they can have replicas so that it provides high availability as well, right? So to sum up, like cluster is a really well-designed tool or specification to support horizontal scalability for Redis as well as high availability. Okay. And under the hood, each of these Redis primary instances, they need to keep a copy of the cluster information, right? And they gossip around and they exchange that copy of information as well, right? So the client in this case, you cannot use the ordinary Redis client as well, right? Because upon connection, the client also receives a copy of the cluster information so that it knows when you operate on a certain key, it knows like which Redis instance to reach out for that operation, right? So you need the specialized version of the client, which is called the cluster client. It also handles additional stuff like redirection and stuff. We will see that in examples soon. But basically, this specialized cluster client and the actual Redis cluster, they work together to provide you high availability and horizontal scalability. So yeah, it's a distributed solution that we have in the Redis community. So why do we ever consider to migrate the Redis cluster to a Dragonfly single instance, right? So there are two reasons behind this logic. The first reason is that a single Dragonfly instance, by the way, by instance, I mean like a single running Dragonfly binary, right? In terms of software, not just the machine or the server, right? So a single Dragonfly instance running on a single machine, by its nature, it can handle a lot more in-memory data. As I mentioned, Dragonfly is able to handle up to 1 TB, 1 terabytes, right? So whereas a single Redis instance, due to the architectural design, the most of the time, the comfortable range would be like a few tens of gigs of in-memory data for a single Redis instance, right? So if you go beyond that, because Redis is single-threaded, it probably will like suffer from degraded performance if you have like more in-memory data than that, right? So sometimes even if you have a very powerful multi-core, like large memory server, sometimes within that single server, you still need to use Redis cluster to fully utilize the hardware, right? Because otherwise a single Redis instance, you won't be able to like fully saturate that piece of like powerful hardware, right? That's why sometimes you need Redis cluster on a single machine, which kind of increases the DevOps complexity a little bit, right? So because of what I just said, like Dragonfly can naturally handle more, right? That's why it makes sense to migrate a Redis cluster to Dragonfly. So that's one reason. The other reason is that, as I mentioned, the Redis cluster, it has like more functionalities like redirecting, keeping the cluster information. So it has like more functionalities in terms of the cluster specification than the single Redis instance, right? So that means that when we do the migration, we're not only like grabbing all the data from the cluster to Dragonfly. That probably means that on the Dragonfly side, we also kind of need to support the same, cluster specification in terms of, how you do sharding, how you do the, hash slots calculation, on the Redis cluster side, right? So in order to do that, Dragonfly actually has a mode called emulated cluster mode. So on that single Dragonfly instance, it's emulating a cluster specification. Okay? So both of the two things, they combined, makes this whole migration, makes it make sense. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to migrate a Redis cluster to Dragonfly instance, single instance, right? So yeah, I hope that's clear. And yeah, we have documentation on these as well. Let's see, we have like in our documentation under managing Dragonfly, under cluster mode, we have like more explanation of the emulated cluster mode of Dragonfly. Why is that needed? And yeah, and it's a way that that the team built in order to support migrating from Redis cluster to a single instance Dragonfly. Cool. So yeah, that's enough of talking. I suppose we want to see some demo, and that's what I'm here for. And I believe that's what we are here for all of us as well, right? So for the demo, we're going to have a setup of 3 instance Redis cluster. They will be located, on my local machine, and they all start with, their port numbers. They start with 7, so from 7380 to 7382. That's for the Redis instances. And for the Dragonfly instance, we're going to use 6380 as the port number, so that I think it's probably easier for us to distinguish between the two. And yeah, let's see them in action now. So in order to run a Redis cluster, so I have prepared a few like windows here, right? So yeah, we will probably use we will use all of them, but many of them were just keep them running like in background, so that you don't have to worry about them too much. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to just manually create 3 Redis instances, right? And let's see what we have. So I'm going to grab the command over here, and I'm going to explain the command before we run it, right? So this is the first command, which I will be running. I will be running a Redis instance, right? So I'm specifying the port. I'm also specifying that please run it in the cluster mode. Protected mode is set to no, it's just for demo purposes, right? And then we have like additional configurations for the cluster, right? We have like a timeout and where this instance should store its cluster config file, right? So I'm gonna just run that and see how it goes. Yeah, so we have 1 Redis instance running now. So for the next 2, terminal windows, I'm gonna do very similar things, except that they have different ports, as I mentioned, right? So I'm gonna do 7381. And I'm also going to do 7382, just a second. Cool. So now we have 3 Redis instances running, right? So they are like on like 80, 81, and 82 on the 3 ports. By the way, Redis has a very nice, ASCII art over here. And currently Dragonfly doesn't have one, but we do have ASCII art design competition or challenge, right? That you can find more details on our LinkedIn page or in our blog page. On our blog page, we have this ASCII challenge, right? So it is encouraging like all the creative guys from our community, like all of you, to be creative and to design something like this. Maybe including the Dragonfly logo, right? So, and yeah, it's running until the end of March. And yeah, we will be handing out the prize if your design is chosen, right? So all the details are in this blog post. Please check it out. Yeah. So currently, so back to our demo, we have 3 Redis instances running, right? So they're all in cluster mode, but they kind of don't know each other yet, right? So for the next command, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Redis CLI. And so here's the command. So it's basically using the Redis CLI to create the cluster, right? And it's specifying like, the 3 instances that we have. So the Redis CLI will tell the 3 instances to join together and, form a cluster. Let's try that. Cool. So as we can see now, the cluster setup is complete. Right? So as I mentioned, like all the Redis instances, they need to be master instances because they handle both reads and writes, right? And underneath the cluster specification using hashing algorithm called the COC16, I believe, to compute a slot number for a certain key, and each of these master instances may need to handle like a slot range. So that, so if I compute the hash of a key and it falls into this range, then I know that the key will be residing, in master one, which would be, the second instance that I ran earlier. Right? Okay, so now they have it's complete. The Redis cluster is there formatted, and then I'm gonna run Dragonfly because I'm on Mac. I don't think Dragonfly runs on Mac at the moment, so I'm gonna use Docker to run Dragonfly. So what I have is I've prepared like a Docker compose file to run Dragonfly as well. Yeah, as you can see, Dragonfly is running. We don't have the ASCII art, so please spend some time if you have good ideas for the ASCII art for Dragonfly. So Dragonfly is running as well, and it's currently running on, as I mentioned, the 6379 port. But I think I am forwarding it to 6380. Cool. So that's my Dragonfly instance. So yeah, so all these tabs, they're basically Redis and Dragonfly servers running. I'm just gonna leave them behind, right? So next up, what I have is I have a script that loads some data into the Redis cluster. Right? So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use environment variable, and then I'm just gonna run the script I have so that it loads some data into the Redis cluster. So into those, and it's gonna be spreaded into the 3 Redis instances, right? Let's try that. Cool. So we have data in these 3 instances. Cool. Let's just double check if we have everything correct, right? So let me check the Dragonfly instance just to make sure that it doesn't have any data in there. If so, we're gonna clean it. Just make sure. I think it shouldn't because it's a brand new image. Let's see. Oh yeah, we do have something. So let me just go in there. Make sure that this is the Dragonfly server, right? And I'm gonna just flush it. So now I don't have any data in this Dragonfly instance, right? So the database size of this Dragonfly instance is 0 now. Cool. So now I'm gonna head over to one of the Redis instance, right? So let's say Redis CLI port 7380. So I'm trying to connect to the first Redis instance, right? So I'm in here. Let's see what we have. Let's do keys. So yeah, we have a bunch of sample data that I just loaded, and they're all hashes, right? So let's try to get one. Let's say user 22, hgetr, 22. As you can see, this is a hash data type, and we have the corresponding field values for user 22, right? So one thing interesting is that what if I try to, because I know the sample data contains like user from 0 to 100, right? What if I try to access a user that is not in this particular Redis instance, right? Let's say maybe 23, right? Oh, 23 is also here, maybe. Yeah, 23 is here. So let's try a different one. Let's try maybe 15, right? So I get an error here because, again, this is Redis cluster, and this user 15 just happened not to be in this instance, right? It's specified over here that it's in in another instance, right? So the reason is because I use the Redis CLI, as the single instance client to connect, right? So for Redis CLI, there's a trick actually. If you use -c option, Redis CLI will be the cluster client in this case, right? So if we try that and we go to the same 7380 instance, and I try to access user 15 as well, this time around, because Redis CLI is running in the cluster mode as well, right? So this time around, we get a redirection message saying that, oh, actually this key resides on a different instance, right? So it will be redirected, and then we got the information back for user 15 as well. So, this is kind of like a proof, or, like to show you that you need a specialized client for cluster configuration. Cool. So yeah, it looks like we do have all the data and in the cluster, and we have nothing in the Dragonfly instance, right? So what I'm going to do right now is to use the read command. So by the way, let me just Google the read command super quick. yeah, it's the software, not the video game studio. Right? So Riot, it is from the Redis community, and it is an awesome tool to, to move data in and out from Redis. Right? So it has like a very nice documentation page here as well. So this is what we're going to use for today. So let me grab the command that I have over here. Yeah. So let's take a look before we run it, right? So we're doing like a Riot and the COI command. I think this is available on Mac. That's why I can run it. It's also available on Linux. I'm not sure about Windows though, but yeah, please check the documentation page. And we're specifying info for like, for logging. So please, while we're running, please tell us like more information, right? And the host is going to be localhost, and the port is 7380, which is the first instance we have in the Redis cluster, right? Note that we're connecting to only one instance of the Redis cluster. That's enough, right? We don't have to specify all three instances. Why is that? Because again, within the cluster, each instance has a copy of the cluster information, right? So connecting to one of them is sufficient to know the whole cluster topology, in order to reach out to the other two instances as well, right? But yeah, we need to specify the cluster flag, just to tell Riot that this whole thing it is a cluster, right? And for the sub command, what we're trying to do is we are trying to do replicate. Riot support other sub commands as well, but in this case, we are using replicate, the replicate sub command, right? And the target place will be, localhost 6380, which is the Dragonfly port, right? And we specify a reasonable batch size, so it doesn't take too much keys out of instance at once. So yeah, kind of reduce the one-time load to your instance, right? So it's a reasonable batch size, just to speak a batch size. Okay, so that's it. It is that easy. So thanks to a few things, thanks to the Redis cluster, very well designed specification, thanks to Dragonfly's compatibility, and thanks to the convenience that the real tool has brought to us. So let's try this command right now. Okay, so now let's run this command and see how it goes. As you can see, it finished very fast, and we can just double check if we have all the data in the Dragonfly instance as well. Let's do db size. Yeah, so now we have 100 keys, which are like replicated from the Redis cluster, and it was the sample data that we used, right? So yeah, we can also try to just to verify maybe one of the keys. Cool. So yeah, it's here. It worked perfectly. So in the meantime, if you want to have more visualization, you can use like a desktop GUI manager for Redis or for Dragonfly. Right? So for me, I have a manager called TinyRDM. And as you can see, I've set up connections to both the Redis cluster and the Dragonfly single instance. Right? So if I try to connect, as you can see, we have all the keys, all the hash keys for the user information like this, right? And similarly, on the Dragonfly side, we have these 100 keys as well. Yeah, so basically that's it. And again, this implies some downtime for migrating from the cluster to Dragonfly single instance, right? Because it's a one-time command, and it just takes all the keys from the cluster to the single instance, right? Riot, it actually does for replication. It actually does support like a live replication option, right? But it's also not, it also does not guarantee data consistency, right? So it's so migrating a cluster is definitely like harder than migrating just a single instance, right? So yeah, but we will keep an eye on this, and because we do understand some of our users or customers, they're asking about this cluster migration and things as well. So we're gonna make sure that you know we do have something already, but it's gonna getting better. It's gonna be getting better every day. Cool. So yeah, that's for the demo, and let's do a recap of what we see this time and what we've seen like in previous sessions, right? So Dragonfly is compatible with the Redis serialization protocol It supports actually both versions, the version 2 and version 3. And Dragonfly currently support 240 plus Redis command, and we're adding new ones every day, right? And it is also able to load the Redis snapshot file, which is the RDB files. And Dragonfly can be a replica of Redis. And we also do have an emulated cluster mode. Sorry for the typo over here. We have an emulated cluster mode in Dragonfly, which supports, migrating from Redis cluster to Dragonfly single instance. And finally, the real tool can be used to transfer data from Redis to Dragonfly. Right? And due to this level of compatibility and due to, the existing tools from the Redis community, all this help, as I just mentioned earlier, right? Due to all these things, we can easily migrate from Redis to Dragonfly. So yeah, give it a shot if you have time. Try locally. It should be a seamless experience. And finally, looking into the future, we are I'm gonna briefly talk about Redis cluster today. So we do understand that sometimes vertical scaling is not enough. Like if you think about it, like 1 TB in-memory data for caching and stuff, it's a lot, right? But I would argue that for most of the smaller or medium organizations, it's probably like way more than enough. But again, on the other hand, if the organization is huge or it's just like your use case needs more, if you want to go beyond 1 TB, right? So we do understand that vertical scaling has its limit, right? So the design principle is that on a single powerful machine, Dragonfly is able to saturate that hardware, right? It's able to fully utilize your hardware, right? But on top of that, as I said, if you need more, then Dragonfly cluster is available as well, right? So we have a few PRs already merged into the main branch. Yeah, it's kind of like the start of our the cluster support of Dragonfly, right? So it is currently under active development. I think what I can share is that it won't be as the same design as Redis cluster, but we keep compatibility in mind, right? So if you use a cluster, if you use a cluster client to connect, it should work, right? So yeah, we also have a mention, on the same page, managing Dragonfly cluster mode. We have a mention here as well, like the multi-node cluster mode. Right. So yeah, it's under active development right now. Cool. So yeah, that's it for today. So yeah, you can please join our Discord server as well. Yeah, I'm supposed to have like a QR code over here, but for some reason, so probably the best way is not to follow the link over here. Why would people do that? It's so the best way would be go to dragonflydb.io and scroll down a bit. At the normal social section, you see our Twitter, Discord, and GitHub, right? So yeah, please hit on this Discord button and join our Discord server so that we can have a chat and join our community. We have all the questions, releases, blog post announcement, and everything in the Discord server. Yeah, so please do join today. Cool, and yeah, that's it for today. And let's see if we get any questions for today. So there's a question about using the Kubernetes operator of Dragonfly versus using Sentinel. Yeah, thank you so much. I believe you attended, our previous session as well. So yeah, Dragonfly operator provides something similar to, the Sentinel configuration, right? So if you use Dragonfly Kubernetes operator, the operator is able to handle automatic failover from like a primary to a replica, right? So it's I would say that it's similar experience, depending on if you're running Dragonfly on bare metal, like if you use like a bare metal server and maybe Kubernetes is not available, it's not like in your toolbox, then yeah, Sentinel can be the way to go to achieve high availability. But on the other hand, if you're already running Kubernetes and you're more familiar with that, then the operator can like I would say almost replace the functionalities of Sentinel as well in terms of automatic failover. But the operator has like additional more cloud native features such as taking snapshots to cloud storage like AWS F3. Yeah, so the operator support more than that. So it's more cloud native, which gives you more cloud-related features such as monitoring with Prometheus and Grafana, taking snapshots to F3 and or maybe PEC, right? And plus the operator itself has a bunch of configurations that you can use as well. So yeah, it's in terms of high availability, automatic failover, I'd say they're similar, Sentinel and Operator. But yeah, if you're more cloud native, then Operator could be a better choice. I hope that answers the question. Thank you so much. Cool. Okay, I don't think there are more coming in for today, but yeah, if you, as I mentioned, don't be shy now, and if you still very shy, like just like me, don't be shy to join our Discord server. And so yeah, and please engage and have a nice chat with us. Yeah, and also don't forget that we'll be in KubeCon Paris soon. So yeah, see you there. See you there as well. Cool. That's it for today. And as usual, the recording will be released soon after this session. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a good day.